the I Am a Podcast with Loretta and Bianca. Stories, advice and discussions to resource, encourage and support independent music artists. Hey everyone, firstly, Happy New Year. Well, this week's I Am a Podcast is part 2 of our top tips for artists, which we hope will be invaluable to artists just starting out on their journey and a good reminder for the veterans among us. This episode covers the importance of having a plan, finding and applying for funding, consistency, knowing your why, building the right team, and also finding your USP. So hopefully lots of valuable and useful stuff in there for you. So sit back and enjoy. So leading on to our next tip there, we've just spoken about balancing your day job, if you like, and your artistry. In that, and one thing that's really going to help you to stop being frustrated, to realise you are actually getting somewhere, and also to just know when you're in the position when you can perhaps change your balance of life in terms of your day job and developing your art, is to have a plan. If you're just making music in the evenings and at the weekends and you're working your day job, it can feel like an endless cycle. You don't know if any of them are actually getting anywhere. But if you've actually got a workable plan where you're really honest at your start point, and this is so important. If you look at any map and you've got the place where you want to go to, you're never going to get there if you don't know where you're starting from. You need your starting point in order to map out your route. And artists are very good at knowing where they want to end up, and sometimes not so good at being realistic about where they are. One of the things that we are big fans of is having a 12 to 18 month plan. And sometimes when I say that to artists, they're like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing next year. I don't know what I'm doing in 18 months. But believe me, when you take some really big goals and break it down, you can very easily use up those months, and you're more likely to find yourself, I don't know if I can achieve that much in that time. But having it on paper and in step by step can really help you to keep on track, because in those months when you're feeling really overwhelmed with your day job and you're thinking, what am I doing this for? Am I even getting anywhere? You go back to your plan. Oh, actually, I've recorded 2 songs. I'm on schedule. I said I'd do this by this date. It can be so encouraging to know that you are in fact getting somewhere. And at the same time, you can have a plan of when you're going to do things around your life, around your when you might know you've got some time off. Perhaps you can put a tour in, or around personal commitments as well. It keeps things moving. And I would just say my biggest tip for having the 12 to 18 month plan is have 2 or 3, even 4 big plans, but in between, the really important stuff is having the tiny baby steps, because if we only focus on the big mountains, we get completely overwhelmed. It's just important to start, to every day, every week, just do something towards your dream, and it's like those small steps that will get you there, and it stops you from just being a bit of a rabbit in the headlights and inactive. Yeah,
that's so good. I also think to make it like true to like you and realistic to you, and actually being aware of what your roadblocks are, because sometimes Loretta manages me, and sometimes when we're making a plan, like we're making this plan and you're saying, yeah, you can do this, and in 6 months time we do this, and these are all the steps we're going to take to get there. And in my mind, sometimes I'm not communicating the roadblock, so I'm not really committing to this plan inside.
We have had that.
My inside voice is saying, no, I'm not sure this is achievable, but I'm not necessarily saying it because I want to achieve these big goals. But actually make your plan and be aware of the things that could be difficult. So sometimes we've made plans to, we're going to record and we're going to release this music, but I know that I don't necessarily have the money in place. So I'm like, how am I going to do that? And I'm maybe committing to a plan that's not necessarily long enough to help me to earn that money in some way, shape or form. So
and this is the thing, because it's not set in concrete. So don't feel a slave to your plan, and certainly don't feel a failure when you don't get it. It's there for a guide. It's there to keep you on track. And the great thing, you're not going to publish this. You're not going to put it on your Instagram page. So if that deadline goes, nobody else knows apart from you and your manager if you've got one. So, we've been pretty good at like, okay, well, that didn't didn't happen, let's put the next one in. And you don't need to beat yourselves up about it. But when we've got a realistic plan, it's really helpful to have the plan there to say, no, actually, let's stick to this is doable. And then we put in those bite-sized, achievable chunks in between. It suddenly becomes realistic.
Yeah, because if you're only looking at a massive big goal, it can really feel very daunting. But if I think, this month all I need to do is like write X amount of songs at home, that is achievable, then okay, my big plan is to release this thing and go on this tour and do all this X, Y and Z promo and all these different things. Like that can seem just too much. So yeah, those small goals will really keep you on track, because you just don't look at, once you've made it, don't look at the big goal, just look at your next thing you have to do. And it can be really helpful. So the next tip we wanted to share is to find out about funding and apply. We spoke about income streams and paying for, your recording and all different things that you have to do, you have to pay for on this journey. Funding can be really, really valuable, and it's one of those things that I suppose people at the beginning of their career probably disqualify themselves from, and feel like they wouldn't, a funding organisation wouldn't give them money because they've got nothing to show for it. But that's not necessarily the case. There are a lot of funding schemes that are for artists at the beginning of their career, to help you to just make your start. A lot of funding is for people who are on the journey, who have a little bit of a track record, who have something that the funding organisations can look at and go, okay, we'll see what this person's doing and we want to help them to do more. But there are some that actually are for those starting out. So I just want to encourage you to find out about the funding organisations and opportunities in your territory. If you're not listening from the UK, there's likely going to be funding in your country somewhere, and to find out where those places are and start to apply. A lot of them, you have to be in the process of applying. They kind of get to know you by you applying. So
yeah, don't be put off if you don't get it the first time. Do apply again.
Yeah, because they'll likely remember you from last time and kind of look to see how you've moved forward and how you've progressed. So just get on the treadmill of learning how to approach these funding applications. They do take a certain approach and a way of communicating your journey and what you need that money for. But often you will learn by doing, because if, say, you don't get it, you can ask for feedback and you can hopefully find out why it didn't go your way that time, and then you can make those adjustments the next time. But just getting into the practice of doing that, because if it takes a week to apply for some funding that helps you to create the next thing or helps you to go on tour, that is well worth doing.
And we're obviously based in the UK, but if you haven't heard of any of these, just a few names to throw out there that you can Google and look. Help Musicians UK have got a really helpful funding tool where you can look up different criteria. The PRS Foundation have all sorts on there. You can have a look there. Yeah. You can also have a look at the Arts Council. There's all different funding, and again, it gives you really grave detail on the criteria, the eligibility, and those sorts of things as well. There's just loads. You can
Mobo, they do some.
Yes, they do some.
Sound and Music, they offer some funding too. There are just smaller bodies as well who are just offering quite specific, maybe even genre specific funding. So it just takes a bit of time on a search engine, to find out about the funding and just looking at the criteria and seeing if you're eligible and just cracking on with that. And even if you contact them also to get some advice of how to approach your application, that is also helpful. It can seem daunting, but it's just well worth the time and effort.
Absolutely. So moving on then to our next tip is consistency. I laugh when I say this one because I think it's a really difficult one for creatives, because I think, just like if we go back to our very first tip on the music being everything, if you speak to most artists when they started, it was so effortless in the beginning. You know, they just couldn't stop writing, and all these songs would come in, and you know, they were struck by creativity. And then every artist who's a little more seasoned goes through a stage where they find it hard to get songs, where life's taken over, or they just feel like they've got writer's block, or just that it's been so long they don't know how to get back to it, and all of these things. And it's really easy to give up being an independent artist for so many reasons. Money is one of them, life is one, but being consistent is just something we would really want to encourage you to do, to not just like literally go for it and put everything into one project, and either from disappointment or exhaustion, just not doing anything for this, you know, for a long time. But again, going back to that 12 to 18 month plan, you can have a plan to pace yourself, to have stuff out there, consistency, and make it realistic. If you're someone who can't post on social media every day, then don't, but do something that's consistent, maybe twice a month, but make sure you just keep doing it rather than not at all, but what's realistic for you, but still keeping going.
I think consistency also just helps to keep you inspired. You know, you know that there are those periods of slump, but actually if you have the mindset of consistency, you've decided that actually this isn't going to last forever. Like, I'm not going to allow this to last too long. I'm going to keep going. So you know, I know an artist, Lumray, she said, you know, if you need time off, take that day, take that week, but make a decision that that's how long that's going to be, and you're going to start again, and you're going to continue, but just don't let it, the months and the months. I've done it. I'm saying it because I've done it. Not months and months, but years and years. So yeah, consistency just helps you just to keep your dream alive, but also it keeps your audience engaged, and even the people that are also investing in you around you. Like, if you believe in you, then they'll continue to believe in you too.
Yep. So just keep going in a realistic way for you. Just don't give up. And if you need to slow down, just don't stop.
Yes. The next tip we wanted to talk about is the dreaded admin. And
this almost gets as bad a response as talking about PR and promoting yourself.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just not a general strength of ours, is it?
No.
As creatives. But you know what? I think an artist being on top of their admin kind of does set you apart a bit. It sets you apart, you know, if you respond to emails and you're courteous and you do all the things that you're supposed to do admin-wise, it just helps your own machine to run smoother, but also gives confidence to the people that are working with you, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's a small thing. It doesn't mean that you have to be like spreadsheet king or queen.
No.
It just means that you need to just basic things like make sure you, like you say, reply to emails. I'm not even going to say reply on time. Reply. Some people just don't reply to emails, even if it's something that you're not interested in. Another time you might be, and then you next approach that promoter or the person that you're trying to speak to, and then they remember that you just didn't even respond to them last time. So small things like that. Obviously, the whole point of being independent, you don't have a label behind you, so you're going to have to be responsible to making sure you get paid. So that means making sure that your music's registered properly. That's such an important thing. So many artists who don't do that.
It. Like I am guilty at the beginning of my career of just putting my music out there going, oh yeah, I know I should put it on PRS. Like, why am I not doing that? Why did I not do that? People were buying my music, people were playing my music, and I was just like, yeah, I don't want to be paid for that. The mind boggles. But it just seemed like, I remember it seemed like a chore, and I was like, I went on and then I saw all these boxes and things I had to fill out. I was like, oh gosh, I'll do that later. There's still one that I haven't done properly. I can talk about the PPL one, like that one I haven't done properly. It just seems
I have to say some of these websites, and we are going to be doing some posts and videos on these because they don't make it easy for you. Even if you have an admin brain, I so understand why artists say, I can't cope with that. I just want to write some songs. So we will talk you through, but I have to say that most of them do have really great helplines because they know artists are like that. So you can call up. There is help there to talk you through registering your music. There's some really great guides out there, and like I said, we will be doing our own IAMA ones, but it's really important. Another one with PRS in particular is when you've gigged, making sure you submit your set list. That's a really small thing to do, that, you know, even if it's 20 quid that comes through, and it's just, you know, that's money for your music that you've earned. It makes you feel great when you get a check through.
Yeah, and if you're gigging loads, that's a little...
No one gets a check anymore, but you know what I mean.
It's all right. It's all right, Lil. Yeah, no, that, imagine if you was on like a real gigging kick, and you was like gigging most days, like every week. Like that's a little earner at the end of the day. Like that could build up to money to record another track. So like we can say there's not necessarily a lot of money out there at the beginning, but there is something, and just getting into the habit of keeping on top of that is just a good practice to have. And then the same, like with, if you've got a self-employed element to what you do, like just keeping on top of your taxes, and just, you know, all the admin around your accounting as well. That's important.
As soon as you're beginning to earn money, you need to make sure that you're registered self-employed, and that you're putting some money aside for that, so that doesn't come back and sting you as well.
Yeah.
Wow, this next one.
Yeah.
Well, this is familiar territory for every artist. We're going to talk about knockbacks here. It's just something you have to get used to as an artist. And I always say that I think independent artists are some of the hardest working people out there, which is so true. But they are also grow the thickest skin, because you get, you know, for every yes, there's often been about 8 no's as well. And it just comes with part and parts of the territory. Do you think it gets any easier, B, as you go along?
I think it can get easier. I think it's easier for me understanding that I'm not for everyone, and no one is for everyone. Like, not everyone's going to love what I do. I'm not going to be right for every single opportunity, in the same way that I don't love all music. I don't love all genres. I don't love, you know, some things I love more than others. So I think as you go on the journey, you start to not see a knockback as necessarily personal to you, but actually that you're not everyone's flavour. Maybe I'm not actually strong enough here. Like, you're able to assess yourself and stand back from yourself and go, actually, maybe that opportunity hasn't come to me because I'm not actually ready for it. So maybe I've got some work to do for the next year, and I'm going to apply again. I think the thick skin does help you just to assess yourself from the outside in a little bit.
It's difficult because being an artist, your product is yourself. You're asking someone to comment on your voice, on your songs, your babies, if you like. So that's a difficult thing. There's no other profession really where it's so personal in that way. But it is unfortunately something to get used to. And when you get your head around that, it might actually help with our next point, which is about figuring out what success means to you. And we talk about this a lot, about defining your why, because I think the more you know what your why is, other people's opinion matters less. So when those rejections do come, if you know your why, and if ultimately it doesn't fit with your why, it's so much easier to move on. And I know that's difficult when you do know your why and you think it would have been a good fit, but at the same time, coming back to your motive of why you're doing this, who you are as an artist, and what your goals of success are for you. Are they that you would be full-time and be making a career out it? Are you just want to get your music out there, the songs that you have, do you just want to get them out there? Or do you want to be touring and seeing the world with your music? Whatever your goals are, having those in mind and knowing what success means to you, and not letting somebody else put their definition of success on you, can bring a lot of freedom. Yeah,
I think that's great. I think when we interviewed Governor B a while back, he was talking about having a mission statement, you know, and, you know, knowing like why you're doing what you're doing, so that you can, at different stages in your career, you can come back to it and go, okay, these are the reasons why I'm still doing this. Does this fit in with my personal mission statement? Does this opportunity, does this knockback, is this knockback really that important? Is it important to my ego, or is it important to my overall trajectory? And if it is, maybe I'll improve or do the things I need to do to have and be ready for the similar opportunity again. So knowing what success means to you probably could be helped by figuring out at this point, at this beginning stage of your career, what your mission statement is. What is the purpose? What is in 10 years' time? Like, what do you still want to be the essence of why you're in the game?
just a quick reminder that we have a growing library of really useful videos on our YouTube page, including interviews with artists and music industry insiders sharing their experience and expertise. Search IAMA on YouTube or visit our website www.iama.co.uk. If you listen to our podcast on management, you'd have heard us talking about this next tip in a lot more detail. And it's just to go as far as you can alone, and then to build your team, but build it carefully. We talked about when you should get a manager, and we pretty much agreed that you don't need a manager at the start of your career. There's so much that you can be developing yourself. You just listen back to all the tips we've given you. Most of those are ones you can just get on with yourself, and it needs to start with you. So do as much as you can alone, but when you do need help and you do need your team, and nobody, you're always going to get further with a team, aren't you? But it's really important about choosing them. And what would be your basis? I mean, just like we said, your music is very personal. It's like your babies, so it's like choosing a school or a nursery for your children. Who are you going to trust with it? So for you, like what's been your criteria of who you've allowed to be involved, and how have you gone about that?
Because I did have a manager quite early on, and I don't think it worked, because I don't think I did know who I was. I didn't know why I was doing music, and I just didn't know like who I was in the game, like why am I doing this, what do I want to achieve? And so now we partnered, and you're part of my kind of you're my manager, and you're part of my team, and I think we work because you know me, why I'm doing this, and also you have vision for me that is in line with my vision for myself, but it also takes me further. It's like, do you know what I mean? Like it expands upon like the essence of why I'm doing this.
I was just thinking, even wider than that, for example, when we did your album launch, and the amount of people who wanted to be a part of it and support you. And I think sometimes just look around, who are your biggest champions? What friend comes to every gig and really believes in you and has got that passion, and perhaps they've got a skill in graphic design and they could become your designer and do your logo or help you with your merch. But look who's around you who really believes in you. I think for me, the number one criteria for any artist to work with someone is for someone to believe in you, and that you could probably, that very simple question apply to anything, even when you're applying for PR, for example. It's very, and we'll come on to that in next actually, but it's very easy to be ripped off, but it might look on paper to go with the manager or the PR company that's got all the big names, but what you really want is someone who believes in you, who gets your vision and who's passionate about your art. Because
as you said, like, there might be someone who's really passionate about what you do, and they may not work on your team for a long time, but you could go, could you give me an hour a week, and could you just help me with my admin, because I'm just so crap at it, and could you just like, they've got a regular job, and what they do is a skill that could help you, and they'd be like, I can give you 45 minutes a week. That's all you oftentimes that's what you need at the beginning. You don't even need as much as that every single week, but they could like send some emails out and for gigs, and they could canvas for opportunities for you. And I absolutely agree. Like, people who believe in you, like, look at what they've got to offer and see if they're willing to help you, even for a small amount of time. Or so consider PR around releases. We've spoken again about this quite a lot, this whole idea of artists who get so involved with the creating and with the project, which of course we started off by saying the music is everything. It's absolutely the right order. However, there's no point having this wonderful project and then at the end of it you have no plan for getting anybody to actually hear it. So that's something that's really important to do. So now that you're a seasoned artist, B, what kind of things do you start to think about when you're literally at the writing stage? I consider who these songs are for, and I consider kind of in terms of PR, I put like visuals and things like that in that bracket, and I'll kind of consider those sorts of things. I mean, I'm thinking about it, and I think at the beginning of someone's career, I wouldn't necessarily think that employing PR for your very first project might not be the best thing. I think trying to promote that yourself and actually having people that give you a realistic kind of feedback on it is probably good, because maybe there is growth for like your second project, and then go, okay, I've learned how to kind of promote myself, and like I've kind of gone a little bit of way, I understand what this takes, so therefore when you do employ somebody, like you know what you're looking for a little bit with them,
and whether they're actually doing their job or not.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you go out the gate and you go, I'm going to spend £600 and this person's going to do whatever they magically do, it can be a big mystery that doesn't pay. But you know, if you do the bit of a hard slog for your first project, your first EP or something, and learn all you can about PR and do what you can, then you can know what you want to expect from a PR company or from an individual that does that.
Yeah, that's great advice, and it is not to be underestimated, that especially if you don't want your art to go to waste.
But I do think that employing PR is something to start thinking about, because there's only so far you can get your music out yourself, and there are some outlets that will only hear from certain PR companies. It's very difficult to get through to them. Not always, sometimes just a good bit of sleuthing, you can find the right email address, but it's not always as easy as that. It's not always easy, but I think the second project is probably the place and the time to get more team around PR. But it's so important to get your music out to people who are not already following you and who are not already in your network, and that's hard to do by yourself.
Yes.
So consider that. Consider like Facebook ads, Instagram ads, when you on important posts, on releases, to target them to your followers and people who follow them, or similar people to the people that follow you, and start learning how to refine those interests in that, in those promo ads, refine the people you're targeting those to, and actually going on that process of learning how to do that is actually quite good. And actually knowing that actually if I send this ad to another territory, a certain territory, I'll get more engagement from that territory, and then be like, okay, maybe in a couple of years I might go and tour there.
Like
things like that. It's just
it all builds a big
business
picture.
Head on.
I love this next one because it sounds so obvious, but it's something we forget. It's simply to live life. We can be so busy being an artist, being an artist, if you like, as a business. We've just said to you to concentrate on the business side, but coming back to our first point, we're going to keep coming back to, because it is the most important point, that the song is everything. You can only have that if you're inspired, if you've actually got things to write about, and usually your first songs would have come out of natural life experiences. That's probably the thing that got you songwriting. So leaving some space to have some actual life is what can break writer's block, is what can fuel a whole project, is what can enable you to have ideas to write with other people. It's so essential to make room for that. Life inspires art, and also just it creates some sort of work-life balance as well, like live and enjoy life. And sometimes in certain stages of life, music isn't where the enjoyment is, because you're in a bit of a hard slog, but actually step back and go on holiday, or take a weekend, walk around your city, or stay at home and do nothing, eat food, watch telly. Sounds so nice.
Right. Just live life. Don't forget to do that.
Image is something that you want to think about early on in your career, and we've kind of touched on this in knowing your why, knowing who you are as an artist. But just like going back to when we spoke earlier about merchandise, everything to do with you as an artist has to have the same message. This is what will help your fans to buy into who you are, to sign up to all of who you are as an artist, to, before you even release your next music, know that they are in. And it can be very confusing if the image of an artist is either grating or just completely different to the musical style. And you have to think of it in terms of branding and in terms, or if you prefer, if that sounds too corporate for you, in terms of message. What's your message that you want to convey through your music, and just making sure that your clothes, how you dress on stage, and how you present yourself says that in down to the font of your logo, so it all gives the same image and shows who you are. You're building up a picture to your fans so that when they hear you, they know you, and then they see you, and then they're like, I get you even more now. They see your merch and they're like, I feel who you are. They see you speak and the things you put up on social media, and they understand you and feel like they are a part of your team and your tribe.
Yeah, and I think at the beginning it's maybe about trying to draw out your uniqueness in even in the simplest of ways, be it something that you consistently wear, or something that you consistently do on stage, just something that that makes sense to you. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be difficult. You could always wear a certain hat, or if you wear glasses, or you have a certain style, or some people, I know they have a particular microphone they use. Like if your style is a bit more retro, they have this like retro mic that they take, and they just put their mic on top of the mic, at every gig, or whatever it is, it can be simple that you build on as you continue to go forward, but just try to think about your unique selling point and how you can integrate that into your image as well as into your music. And in terms of imagery, just getting the best photography you can at the stage that you're at. I mean, today we are used to such glossy creative work, but actually the things that are most impactful a lot of the time is what is unique and what is unique to you, and what, like, if it all makes sense, as Loretta said, if it all tying in with everything. So getting the best photography you can, finding if it's a student photographer, seeing, hitting up colleges. I remember when I was looking for a photographer, I literally Googled, and I was Googling, and then I found somebody who was cool. They were cool, and then I went on their website, but then they collaborated with somebody else. So I did a photography collaboration with somebody else, and I went on her website. She was amazing. And then I just she never did like musicians. It was like, magazines and like student stuff. And she did self-photography, which was beautiful. And then I contacted her and said, would you consider working with me? And she'd never done that. So she was at like a place, she'd just finished education, and she was at a place of exploring and spreading her wings. So I'd got her at a great time, so it wasn't too expensive, but she was incredibly talented, and I worked with her for a few projects. And so sometimes it takes a bit of research to find somebody who's great at the right price point for you. And then if you do have budget, and if you do feel like you're at that point, consider a stylist, and consider
or if you really
direction.
Feel like, do you know what, this is so not my forte, I don't even know where to start.
That too.
Then ask somebody who's a stylist, get them to listen to your music. That they'll be so used to doing that. What image it brings up for them. I mean, it's,
or your most stylish friend, or someone who just always
got a flair.
Yeah, who always just like for every occasion they just hit it. Be like, can I just get some advice from you? Yeah. What would you do if you was me?
Yeah. And there's two ways of doing it. I mean, it's not so much now, but in the past, artists would have like another persona, and they'd be very over the top on the stage, and that's worked for some people. People like David Bowie in the past and things like that. But I think it's important for it to feel like it's you, because even with those artists, that was a message they wanted to get across, and it would have often been an alter ego, like
made
someone
sense
that
of
was
the music as well.
Yeah, made sense of the music, and it was still an aspect of their personality. But in general, I would say your music, if it's from you, is probably most authentic because it's your music. So in the same way, make sure that you feel that you're not dressing as something that's not you, because you think that's how you ought to.
Yeah, as you say, I know some really want to do. Yeah, I know somebody who is incredible artist, but you see them every day. Like I can see them outside the music, and like super ordinary, like super like never crosses over in her ordinary life, like her artistic, presentation, never crosses over. But then when you see her on stage, incredible music, but then very creative with the visual.
So it's almost like a costume.
Yes, and like, lots of stuff in the hair and like the makeup and the it's basically art on the face, and it's all very creative, but that never crosses over into real life. Like, it just never does.
You wouldn't really go to Sainsbury's like that.
No, some would. Some people.
Some would.
Yes.
Some would. Another one, which is just an invaluable piece of advice, is to learn the business. Again, we've touched on this in different forms while we've been speaking to you on this episode, but in terms of making sure that you're educated and that you know the boring stuff, the stuff that you think seems overwhelming and you're not sure what to do, but studying how things work is always going to benefit you. It's always going to help you to avoid certain pitfalls, to avoid being taken advantage of, to know how to negotiate, to know how to react. And it's so important. And there's so many things out there that can help. Musicians Union do seminars and workshops. There's some great books, some books we recommended in the management issue episode of our podcast, where you can listen there at the very end. I recommend 2 books which really help on the music industry, and just knowing the basics. You don't have to be at degree level, but knowing the basics of how things work, of royalties, and can just really help you to just not be taken advantage of, really.
Yeah, and studying the game. I mean, I remember at the very beginning, I used to just read biographies all the time, or I used to see like an artist, like there'd be some famous artists that I loved, and I'd literally just Wikipedia them and then read everything I could find on them and their come up. And one, it was encouraging because it was never straightforward. So they got to where they got to, but it was a long road. Like 9 times out of 10 it was a very, very long road. But I learned, especially artists who I aspired to and they were similar to me, I would literally I'd be like, okay, they did that, or they did that, or they gigged lots, or I'll just literally study them, study their career, study how they did it. And at the very least it was encouraging, but at the most it was informative, and it gave me real life tips on how to do it. We were talking about somebody else who studies performances. They were studying how artists who are similar to them, and literally everything they did on stage, because it might have looked effortless, but actually it was choreographed. Choreographed, and it was just like, oh yes, this is intentional. So it can be really invaluable just to continue to be a student.
And that's what IMA's all about, to make sure that we help you to learn along your journey. I hope you've found this really interesting. Listen back, share the bits that you want to. If you've got questions that you wish we had answered in this podcast or in the future, please do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. This is all about making sure that we're providing you with the information that you need. So if we're missing something, get in touch. We'll do our best to cover it. But in the meantime, we just want to encourage you to keep learning, to keep growing, to keep challenging yourself musically, and just remember, the song is everything.
Yes.
For more great content from IMA, find us on social media at We Are IMA. Check out our Spotify playlist for new music from independent artists. Search We Love Independent Music.
And don't forget to sign up to our mailing list, where you'll receive a free 10-day guide especially designed to inspire and equip independent music artists with some really useful, practical and inspirational resources. Sign up at www.ima.co.uk.